might get lift-off in the championship this week. We got lift-off in the hurling championship last weekend. We're hoping the Ulster championship is going to come good for us this weekend. I don't think it's going to happen in Munster or in Connacht. Let's be honest about it. Tyrone, Cavan, Donegal, Derry, Ger, we're hoping. We need a bit of a spark here. We can't wait till provincial finals.
No, I think the Ulster championship, in fairness, it always throws up decent games, and it was probably the most entertaining as well in the league format, the way they regionalised everything. So over the years, Ulster Championship is the best football championship, provincial championship that's out there, and that has been there for the last number of years. So I think it's something that everyone will be looking forward to the weekend.
Yeah, so we've 3,500 supporters at the Munster semi-finals. I think they're pilot events or something like that. Were you in the Gaelic grounds were you in at the match last weekend? Aaron, how was the atmosphere?
I didn't actually get to it because, to be honest with you, I thought it was still at the 500 tickets. I didn't realise that it just had changed late on Thursday night. So, I was disappointed whenever I turned up. I thought we'd sneaked a lot more into the ground than what was allowed, but it was changed Thursday night to allow more in. By all accounts, a good day out, good atmosphere there. And in fairness, the athletic grounds, it lends well, even whatever it was, 2,500. You have a huge covered stand on one side, and the terrace on the other side has a roof in it, so it generally keeps whatever bit of noise there is into the ground also. So it's good to see. It's obviously very positive. And I suppose I'd say that's what the Ulster Council will be looking at in relation to the Armagh Monaghan fixture. Where we're going to get the most people in. Is it going to be north or south? So I'd say that'll be very much in their thinking.
You could get a home game out of it. Obviously the athletic grounds. Did I call it the Gaelic grounds there?
Oh, no, you said athletic grounds.
Did I say athletic grounds? Did I say athletic grounds? I thought I might have got that wrong. Come here, Kerry, you're obviously playing Tipperary this weekend, and Conor Sweeney's been talking in the media, and he's been talking about, belief. And let's be honest, Tipperary are going in against Kerry, and nobody's really going to give them a chance. And what are the Tipperary lads thinking? He's saying a lot of teams going to play the top teams are probably beaten before they even take the field. So we have a job to do mentally to prepare ourselves for what's coming. Other than that, we need to drive home the message that we believe in what we're doing in training, and we believe that we can compete against them. In my experience playing for Laois, I believed I could win a game, even though everything's telling you that you can't. You just simply have to believe. The problem is after 10 minutes, if you're 6 points down,
it's knocked out of you, isn't it? That bit of hope that you have. No, I think players, you're always going into a game with a bit of hope, and we've all been underdogs at one time or another, and there is that bit of belief that if we just get stuck in, get a feel of the ball nice and early, and ask questions of the opposition, we'll be in the game. But the evidence would suggest that Tipperary aren't in a great place. Obviously relegated to Division 4. I think Conor Sweeney, what he's done there, he's probably bringing light and awareness to the reality of a Division 3 or 4 team playing against a higher opposition, that quite often they might be defeated or 5 or 6 points down before the first ball is thrown in. So bringing awareness to it is the first port of call to try to deal with it, and they'll know themselves as a group of players they haven't backed up the success of last year, and that's something they will probably want to get a good performance out of themselves going into the game. But realistically, it's hard to see them asking too many questions to Kerry the way they're playing,
I know, no, it is hard. But you often see Aaron against teams that play against Dublin. Now I know quality obviously is factored in here, but when the floodgates really open up in the last 20 minutes is when the belief has just completely gone out the window, and it's just a kind of a demoralisation exercise.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, similarly to Cavan, I really can't get my head around Tipperary this year. The old saying is success breeds success, and you would have thought that the enthusiasm within the county, and I suppose within that group as well, who had been knocking on the door and been very competitive for probably the guts of 10 years there, but to end up getting relegated to Division 4, granted they had obviously Colin O'Riordan was back playing for them last year, Quinlivan was missing for basically the whole league, but not to be able to raise themselves in a one-off game to make sure that they avoided Division 4, to me that says that obviously just maybe psychologically or mentally this group have switched off, or there is issues there. You would hope that they'll get some sort of a kick out of themselves, that as reigning Munster champions, that they'll go out and play with, I suppose, a bit of drive, a bit of fire in the belly, to try and get some sort of pride back into the group. after a poor league campaign. But really learning a lot of lessons from what happened. Clare, the last day out is what they need to focus on. Kerry, I think it was, did 15 turnovers at Clare, and it was Clare basically giving the ball away, and they were hit for 1-6 off those turnovers. So that put the game out of sight in the first half, and that's something that Tipperary are absolutely going to have to guard against this weekend and make sure that it doesn't happen. If they can get the half time 3 or 4 points in it, they might make a bit of a game that it's a spectacle that we all will stay attuned to.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in part 3 when we start looking at we do predictions on the other games. Another bit of news, lads, is there's 2 managers gone. So Mike Quirke and Pádraig Davis resigned. Davis straight after the match, and Mike Quirke the day after, but you could probably tell from an interview he did after the game that he was kind of done. And Pádraig Davis was very, very honest. He said, Ger, when I look at the scoreboard, I've neither the energy nor the appetite to try and take that on next October or November. Like, brilliant. Like, he is a straight talker, Pádraig Davis. Remember playing against him back in the 90s. He says, I look up at that scoreboard and I say, do I have the energy to pick that up again and go again? If I'm honest, I don't. And I suppose from Mike Quirke and Pádraig Davis's positions, Quirke's in his 2nd year, Davis is in his 3rd year. So you really want to have the team where you want them at that stage, and to be humiliated. Like, I mean, you're just ripping it up. Like, I imagine everything they believe they have done is kind of out the window.
Yeah, and you would feel for Pádraig Davis, and he was involved obviously as a player for a number of years, and in the background too before he got the managerial role. And again, for those who have played and gone into either coaching or even helping out the underage teams in the local club, there's just so much more involved when you're looking after a team, whether it's under 15s or obviously managing a senior inter-county team. There's so much work that goes into it, and it can be quite straining and draining on you. When you look at how COVID has kind of hampered any sort of progression or continuity in some of the areas where Davis may have improved in year 1, to be was it 22 points they lost it against Meath, and they put up a good score against us in Carlow, and the good feeling they would have had by staying up and beating Tipperary in the Division 3 relegation playoff. He would have hoped for a better performance, and that may have given him something then to say, do you know what, we are going in the right direction. The COVID has gotten in the way, but I can see where we can improve things, and I can see it happen fairly quickly, all going well in the new year, that we actually get a run of 6 league games under our belt, and then give the provincial championship then a good go again. But you can appreciate where he's coming from. Maybe after the game that he came out so quickly, it would suggest that he had the decision made in advance of that. Quite often you don't want to say anything too emotional or controversial after a big defeat, because you're not in the right headspace. But I would say he probably had his mind made up anyway,
Seems that, well, if he was 50-50, that's kind of going to send him over the edge. I often think about managers. I always have players on here as analysts and stuff. I never really think from the manager's point of view, but they put so much into it, Aaron. And, like, I mean, if you play well as a player, I don't know, I always got over a defeat if I played well, because I didn't blame myself. And, you'll have a couple of cans on the bus, and by the time an hour's gone by, I'm thinking about getting home and going out and stuff, and I've gotten over it. But managers, like, I mean, they're to blame. Like, I mean, they might even struggle to go down to the pub or to be tortured.
I know only too well from Dad's time. With club and county, you would have definitely seen both sides of the coin. To be fair, thankfully he brought plenty of success in both places. But definitely the defeats were the ones where it's just so hard for them to take, because I suppose they just feel full responsibility for it, not in terms of obviously their playing group who they have ultimate responsibility for, but just in terms of, especially once it's a county. You're just, I suppose you don't want to see people, you don't want to talk to them, and everyone wants to know what happened, why did it go wrong, were we not prepared, everyone wants their own piece off you, and I suppose even more so from whenever he was involved compared to now, like especially your social media, it's just took everything to an absolute new level where a click of a button and someone's opinion is right in front of your face, as unfortunately Mike Quirke found out with the tweet stat that was put to him after the game. But It is very, very difficult for them, and you would have to feel for both of those managers. I suppose even particularly Mike Quirke, who that was his first venture into county football, and he comes across, and any media work he does and podcasting, that he big thinker with the game, and intelligent, and played that way. But he just got 2 horrible seasons with Laois. He was only really getting going in the National League last year. Obviously, COVID put a halt of Everton, and then he had a rush National League and a rush Championship. Obviously tried to abide by the rules this year round, and it severely hampered the preparation for him and his team. And I would say it's not a true reflection of his ability as a manager, and I suppose that's what will probably disappoint him the most. But they'll not be the last managers, I'd imagine, that'll walk the plank before the summer's out.
Yeah, exactly. No, but it does have to be pointed out how unlucky Mike Quirke has been in the 2 years. Like and before the lockdown, they started the league really well. Drew with Roscommon and beat Armagh away. Well, we always beat Armagh, and so that's not really much of a surprise. Come here, just before I move on, have you ever seen Joe being tortured in the pub and have to go over and rescue him after a game, like by the same old face?
Absolutely. I don't know him. In fairness, he's got his own 2 sort of regulars in town, and all he needs to do is make eye contact with the barman and they come over and rescue the situation. But no, definitely it does. It happens. There's some people who just don't take no for an answer.
Yeah,
I say Joe could look after himself, Aaron, in fairness. So.
What were you?
He has his own crew. He'll always have his own men that he would always go to the games, or people who would always have his back, and they've the same people they'll go out every weekend and meet up. So he doesn't mind having the few sociables with them, but it's whenever someone else chips in, that's where it can get difficult.
Imagine being an inter-county manager, being livid after a loss, and having some lad telling you where you went wrong.
Yeah.
Oh my God! Like, I mean, the patience you would need for that, because players don't really get that either. They get it a bit, but again, if you played well, they're qualifying everything by saying, "No, we're not blaming you. You were outstanding today," and you can kind of listen to that a little bit because you're being complimented. What were you like after losses, Jared? Did you carry them around with you, or did you get over them pretty quick?
No, I think I'd agree with you there, Wooly. In your own summation, when you are a player, you're obviously disappointed initially, and once you get a couple of beers into you, kind of unwind a bit, and you have to, it's just you kind of got to let it go for that particular evening, and then you begin to look at things maybe the next day or two, areas of your performance or the team's performance, and again try to put things right. But again, losing and playing poorly is a hard thing to stomach.
That's the worst.
And that's the worst. And trying to get over that is particularly when you look at how the football championship is now structured for this season. Losing and playing poorly and having to wait till the end of January to play a challenge game or a pre-season game is a very, very tough place to be in, that you can't do anything really for 6 months other than get the gym stuff going or watching lads playing with their clubs. But no, as a player, you just have to get on with it. You have to kind of dust yourself down, and you can't dwell too much in the past. Like, unfortunately, you lose more games than you win, and again, you just have to kind of learn to deal with it and kind of push on. But I think a lot of the elite players who are successful, and you hear guys from different sports, and you be listening to different podcasts or reading books or watching films, the best guys out there, even when they played well, they still got caught up on the one that they lost or the ball that they missed, and that's just the nature of an elite high performance individual. But as a player, you definitely forget about it quicker. As a manager, and from my own teaching career beforehand, if a student got good marks, he was a good student. If the student got bad marks, he's a bad teacher. And the same is true for coaching, that if the team plays well, sure, it's a great team of players, but if they play poorly, sure, it's the manager's fault. What's your man doing with them? Well, if you actually look objectively at the video, well, that goal came from an overlap when our number 15 didn't bother his arse to track back, and all of a sudden they carried the ball up the field. But then, anyway.
The opposite, actually, I'm laughing. The opposite happened with us when Micko was over Laois. When we won, it was because Micko was the Messiah, and when we lost, it was because the players weren't committed. Look, Micko, what's he meant to do with those lads?
Yeah, exactly.
So he was just at a level where he never really got blamed, because obviously he'd won so much. Come here, Brian Hurley's been talking in the media, Aaron, and I thought this was an interesting one, and he's talking about the advice Kieran Sheehan gave him since he came back from the Aussie Rules, and it's something I've thought about. He said small things that they're very good at catching the ball. He just showed me different things in terms of moving out. Their hands are always out, so you don't bring it into your chest. I love learning new things and picking up small things that I can try in a match or bring into training sessions. So anybody listening, if they're watching Brian Hurley this weekend or on the highlights, watch him going out and holding his hands out. Because I've thought about this, because when you play in the forward line, and you obviously played in the backs, and you're trying to get that fist in. Yeah. Now, catching it into your chest is a guarantee. Like, unless you're a fumbler and you can't hold on to it. But generally, if you let it hit your chest, you wrap your arms around it and it's secured. But if you bring it that far in, the back behind you can get a fist, So I remember marking this Highland lad from Wicklow, and he kept getting a fist in. And I was thinking, jeez, this lad, Kieran Highland, he was fast. Now, I was running straight lines out because back then there was no diagonal balls. And whatever, he fisted a few, and I was like, Jesus, every time I bring it in. But anyway, so I started batting the ball down in front of me, so that he couldn't get a fist in. Now, it bounced in front of me and I picked it up. Now, I might have got one or two from that. But the whole idea, Aaron, of catching, usually a catch over your head with your hands up, but to catch out in front of your body with your hands, it obviously means you'll never get that ball fisted away, but the technique is much more difficult. Have you ever discussed this up in Crossmaglen or with Armagh?
To be fair, it's actually something that we have been always coached in Cross, is to try and win the ball out in front. And some of the reasons are obviously what you've mentioned, in terms of, if you're pulling it in, you're bringing it closer to the defender to get a hand on. But another reason would be is that just something as quick as you can get shot of it that bit quicker. You've given yourself that wee bit more space from your defender, or even if you're, say, a half forward and you're winning it, you're on the half turn and the ball's gone again, and it's only a wee split second thing. It's only probably centimetres in the difference from pulling it from your chest to an outreach hand or arm. But you basically, as you're turning, you have the ball down in your foot that bit quicker, and it's gone, it's moved on again, and your defender hasn't even got a chance to make contact with you. So yeah, it was good to read that. That's something that Dave took back from Australia, because, like I said, definitely it is something that I know even at senior level with ourselves in the club, that it's something that the management are continuously harping on to our forwards in particular, to make sure that they do it.
Yeah, it's a much more difficult technique, Ger. Have you discussed this?
Yeah, we would have been very similar to what Aaron described there. When the ball is being kicked to your pass, you make sure that you're always coming onto it and get the hands out. And as Aaron described, you can move it that bit quicker.
It's much harder though, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I guess much harder, particularly if it's a wet day.
Or if it's a longer kick.
If it's a longer kick then as well, but
it's very tempting just to pull that into the chest and make sure it sticks.
Yeah, it depends on what the situation is and the context, but I think players like to be kind of challenged that way, even within a drill. Again, no balls in the ground, 30-metre kick pass, you got to catch it in the fingers. Don't be letting the ball come into you, but if you watch the guys playing the rugby now, having played a bit of underage rugby,
they do that,
and we were always taught from a young age to have your hand out ready to receive the ball, so you can move it on nice and quickly.
Yeah, I remember being coached that in rugby too. You have the hand, you catch it out there.
Yeah, you catch
but that's being thrown across a line. It's much easier running onto it.
Yeah, no,
it's not being driven at you.
It's not being driven at you, but then you just got to practice, and some of the practices that we would have had where a fella would be 10 metres away from you and he's full force lashing the ball into you, and you got to try and catch it in your hands. And again, the more you practice, the easier it is then to replicate into the game,
Yeah, one thing where you could get caught is if you get the punch on your arm maybe, and it could spill by having it out there rather than securing it, so maybe that's something.
Well, that's another coaching thing then that I'd be trying to say to some lads involved in, if your man does have the yard on you, that a little gentle nudge on the elbow without pulling the jerseys, because the pull is too easy to give it free.
Yeah.
But a little nudge just as the ball's coming in, and you'll actually see a lot of defenders do it, like getting the flick in with the hurling as well, So.
Yeah, one of the most heartbreaking frees you'll ever get, or that you won't get, Aaron, is when you're going to hand pass a ball and your hand passing hand gets kind of tapped or pulled, and the referee, it's like a hook in hurling. The referee never blows it as a free, and you literally just half hand pass it and it spills away from you, and you look like you've done something wrong, but you've been fouled.
Yeah, you just look like a weakling. It's a depressing one to get. But just on the one we were explaining there again with the hands out in front, again, another coaching point then is that it's very important that you actually run through the ball. Sometimes if you're taking it in your chest, you're stopping and the defender's there and you're maybe looking to spin him or whatever. But in terms of that one there, like, you must run straight through the ball. And you I suppose, depending whether you're an inside forward or you're half forward or what area you're winning in, as Jared says, if you're practicing it often enough in training and you have a manager coaching continuously and harping on, you do, like, you can see an improvement in no time in boys. But it is very important, particularly if you're that half forward, that you're winning in front, you're running straight through the ball, and then you're on your arc run and just swinging it and getting it delivered straight into your full forward line, whether that's straight up the lane again or on a diagonal.
Yeah, exactly. Come here, I meant to tell you, I caught a mark last night, my first ever mark.
And
scored
it.
How
was it? Yeah.
And scored it. And
a high mark or a low mark? Or?
It was a low one, but it was funny. I caught a midfield mark and didn't mark it, kept continuing on, and then I went in full forward and I caught one. And I just continued play up, and all I hear was shout, "Mark it, mark it!" I was like, "What are these lads?" And would never played on a field with this thing ever. And then I caught another one, and I still didn't think about it. I turned around and was going to take my man on, and they're all shouting, "Mark, mark!" And I just put up my hand. Like, the ref shouldn't have given it to me because I kind of played on. But anyways, I thought I'd bring that to you, Junior B. It's a nice. It's I don't know. It felt quite nice marking it and putting the mark over. And I'm a very big critic of the mark. But I don't know. I don't know why there's a bit of a satisfaction for players doing it. Maybe would there be?
There's probably a bit of pressure off you then as the forward that you don't have someone or two fellas lashing into you, and you can kind of gather your thoughts for a minute and see what's on. But again, look at the pros and cons of the mark. I suppose we could be here all day.
We won't get into that. Most of us are against it. I just don't know. It was a nice feeling catching it. Maybe it's. I've never been a free taker, and all eyes were on me then for that free. I don't know. Like, maybe that's just my ego working overtime that I quite like that. This isn't a Junior B match now. I'm talking about my ego. Come here. There's weird goings on, Aaron, in Longford. So I was told about this anyways, and I confirmed it with the Longford County Board. So, it's actually a hilarious story. You couldn't make this up. It's pure GEA. And at a county board meeting a few months ago, whenever the county board meeting was, they decided that the first 5 league club games would be without county players. And I don't have too much of a problem with that, because it was supposed to be a case where 4 rounds would be played before the Meath Longford game. And then the weekend after the Longford or the Meath Longford game, they would give the intercounty players that weekend free, and then they'd be back 2 weeks later. So in theory, I suppose at that meeting they were probably doing the right thing. Now, why they needed to ban them when they're with the county anyways, which would have happened anyways, that's their decision. But as it transpires, the very first weekend that the club was allowed to go back, they didn't play a round of league games. And last weekend, they didn't play a round of league games. So what they've actually done is only play 2 rounds of league games in the time they should have played 4. So now there's 3 league games left. The county team is out of the championship, and they're telling the intercounty players that they can't line out with their clubs in the remaining three league games. Isn't that whatever about the initial decision, Aaron, to not say, here, look, okay, that was what we decided then, but it's changed, and work away now at this stage?
Like, how hard is it to review it now and say, do you know what? This is 3 games of football that we have a full group, whatever, a panel of 30 players that are now missing out on. It's beggars belief how sometimes people, just dig their heels in and stick to something. And you say it can be a typical GAA thing, like, where people just won't go with the times and just say, do you know what, it was a great idea. Unfortunately, the county's exited quicker than we would like. But it's the same for every club then. Everyone gets their club players back. There's some clubs there, who will be benefiting for the next 3 weeks if they don't have a county player, and they might be up against teams that do have county players. That's an advantage to them now. I personally now would find it very hard if I was beaten for Armagh last weekend and the county board was telling me you can't play football now for the next 3 weeks. So it's basically a month now that they can't play football for.
Yeah.
And they're all fit, healthy, and mad for football. And in the middle of the summer, you're going to tell them, come back to me in August and we'll let you play a game. Like, it just, just sometimes we just make issues for ourselves that just aren't necessary.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And the county board tried to say to me, he didn't actually mention the fixtures thing. It was somebody else told me that. They said that the under-20s are still in the championship and the hurlers are still in the championship. And I said to him on the phone, it says only a league game. Let the lads that can play the league game. Like, it's actually outrageous. You're being prohibited from playing for your club. It goes against everything that the GAA stands for.
And I'm trying to, as yourself and Aaron are chatting there, and I'm trying to think of some of the logic behind putting that in place. And, you know, the only logic I can see is that, one, firstly, it takes the pressure off the inter-county guy, that he feels like he's not being pulled back to play for the club team during the inter-county championship. And then secondly, if there is promotion relegation in the local leagues, that a team that, like Aaron mentioned, mightn't have any county players, all of a sudden they're playing against a team with 2 or 3 county players, there might be a bit of a disparity there between them. But other than that, why don't they just change it and let the lads play?
Yeah, like they might change it now.
Yeah,
you know.
The clubs will have to put on a bit of press themselves.
But the county board secretary told me on the phone that it was the club delegates that decided this. They said the clubs decided this, and I was like, wait, now it was the delegate from the club in the county board that maybe decided it. You know.
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting to see how they do what they do, because it's just simply outrageous as it stands.
Well, even if you look at the bureaucracy of it all and how decisions are made and who represents who, like I don't know about Aaron's situation, but even yourself, Willie Portleach, I don't really remember, bar maybe once or twice in my latter years senior of the club, where the club delegate at county board meetings would have asked the opinion
of
happens. Players. No. Never happens. Now, it can't always happen, because you know that consensus model will never work, too many different opinions, but on something like this, I think it seems very obvious. Yes, you're knocked out of inter-county. Give the lads a week off anyway, have their few beers and just unwind, and then come back training the Tuesday week or the Wednesday week after being knocked out.
And it has to be said that was their original plan. It's just the fixtures committee or whatever just didn't enforce these 4 games to be played instead of 5. Just not to be too critical on the initial county board meeting. So Cluxton was playing last night, Aaron, for Parnell, centre half back. I'd say he's absolutely loving it. At least he's gone out of the forwards anyways, because let's just say he's a very accurate forward, but he wouldn't have much of a clue about how to play in the forwards from my memory. There's all sorts of stuff going on here, Aaron. Like, I mean, I was reading somebody in the Irish News, he tweeted, and he said, wouldn't it be typical of him in his last act for Dublin was to forsake the fanfare and create a distraction that protects Evan Comerford? Now, is that overthinking it, or is that overthinking? Like, I don't know. What's your thoughts on it? I'm not going to put words in your mouth.
I have to. My opinion is that he has retired. I think that Desi knows he's retired. I think his teammates knows he's retired. I don't think he wanted the fanfare of it. I think if they could turn the clock back, Desi might have changed his wording at the weekend, or they might have done it slightly different. I could be wrong, but for me, like Stephen Cluxton, he's after playing for Dublin for 20 years, he's been the Dublin captain. He's after winning 8 All-Irelands. He's obviously extremely committed and devoted to that Dublin team. There's no way he is leaving that group in the lurch. He's not leaving Desi in the lurch. He's not either in or out. I've never actually met the man. I think maybe briefly once or twice. So I can't say I know him personally, but given everything that he has done for Dublin, and the fact that he's been a captain and such a pivotal figure, I think there's no way in the world he's leaving them at this stage, that he doesn't know whether he's coming back or not for probably the most rushed championship that he's ever been involved in, apart from maybe last year's. He said time will tell whether I'm wrong or not, but I know he's a very quiet man. He likes to keep himself to himself, but just somebody who was such a pivotal figure in the GAA, and will go down, with iconic status. It probably would have been nicer if he had just said himself, that you step away, and then we all could lash in with laud and plaudits to him. Yeah. But we'll see.
But is there not more speculation now than there would have been if he had retired? Like, it's actually worse now. There was photographers taking pictures of him last night playing with Parnell. You see, I do know Stephen Cluxton. You know him, Ger. But I'll give you an example. So Cluxton's seen as a big Parnell's man and everything, and nothing could be further from the truth from my experience. Like, there was mornings he wouldn't get out of bed to come across training. Like, this is the fella everybody would look up to in the squad. I remember in my second year there where he was looking to play in the forwards. He played 1 league game there in the forwards against Vincent's, actually. And anyways, look, he's not a forward. Anyways, he was putting a lot of pressure on the manager to play him in the forwards. A lot, to the point where I discussed it with the manager, and I says, listen to me. Do we play the best goalkeeper in the whole country, or do we play an intermediate level forward? I said, this isn't even up for debate. He's the best goalkeeper in the country. We need him in the goals, whatever. Anyways, he didn't get his way. And the week before we played Kilmacud Crokes in the championship, we had a challenge match on I think it was the Friday night before the following Saturday or the following Friday night. He went playing five-a-side soccer. We didn't have our goalie a week before the championship. Now I just couldn't comprehend this, and I kind of saw him in a different way then. And when I see this now, I strongly believe Desi doesn't know what the hell's going on. I strongly believe that Cluxton has the hump over something. Now, you can speculate, was it the COVID breach? Was he pissed off over that? I've heard that. You hear different things. Who knows? I think strongly that Cluxton's pissed off over something. He's not above being petulant. He can be a contrary character, and anyone that knows him will admit that. And I believe Desi hasn't a notion what he's doing, because he probably won't answer the phone to him. Now, again, I respect Aaron's. I think the idea that he's taking pressure off the team is fanciful. What's your take, Ger? A week after I asked you for the first time.
Well, kind of last week, Aaron, we were chatting about this, and I was kind of along the same lines as yourself, that, given what he's done for Dublin, I can't confirm or deny Wooly's experiences with the club. That's obviously that's
fact. That's a fact
matter, yeah. But I would have been of the view and stance that if he was going to step away, he would have just done it quietly. But he would have done it at the start of the season, and that maybe he was just taking a bit of a breather to give the mind, body and soul a chance to reinvigorate, and like Desi mentioned in the post-game interview, to get a bit of the appetite back. I think playing the game outfield last night would suggest that he has an appetite for playing for Parnell's last night. He does have his appetite there, but as three of us have experienced here, sometimes the pressure of going back, having played with your county, and you go back and represent the club, you still give the best of yourself, but it's a different kind of pressure.
Do you think Desi knows?
No.
You think Desi's in the dark?
I'd say he's in the dark, yeah.
Well, what's Cluxton playing at then?
I don't know. But that's, I don't know. And again, I mentioned it last week.
Because Paul Flynn replied back to me on Twitter when I was saying this, and he was like, do you think the Desi's not going to tell the media what's the truth? I don't know, maybe I'm naive. Well, no, I'm not naive, because I know Cluxton. I believe Desi in that interview. Yeah. That he says, I'm not sure.
I would believe Desi in that interview, that he isn't sure, and that maybe Cluxton still isn't sure either. But I don't know. It's it's interesting, The fact he played last night has probably messed around with some of my thoughts on it from last week, but
because he'd been playing away with Parnell. I was reading Paddy Andrews, he was talking on Off the Ball, and he says he's not going to be back. The reality is the All-Ireland final, Paddy very, very confident they're going to be in the All-Ireland final. He's probably right, but the All-Ireland final is 6 or 7 weeks away. We're in the middle of the championship, he's not there. It's not fair on anyone for him to be coming back now, so we can write him off.
It's a tough task, I guess, to come in, particularly with a lot of new players coming into the back line, coming into the Dublin team as well, and trying to build those kind of little synergies as a keeper, and getting used to the runs that fellas make for you out the pitch, and those different kind of nuances that you only pick up and learn through actually playing and training with individuals. So it will be hard probably for him to just come back in, but so I don't know. I'm probably a bit bewildered myself, fully, So
it's definitely an interesting one. It might drag on during the summer, and this is another confusing part about it, is it's dragging on during the summer, whereas if he retired, he would go down as the greatest goalie in history. He'd get plaudits for a week, and then everybody would move on. So, the idea that he's taking pressure off somebody, I don't know. I think it's reading way too much into it. Anyways, lads, we've gone over time on the start of the show. We'll come back and we'll look at the matches. All right, lads, so let's look ahead to the games of the weekend. And obviously, Aaron, the biggest game of the weekend is Tyrone-Cavan. I don't think anyone will argue about that. We don't know where Tyrone are at. They're both coming in with confidence bruised, let's be honest. Cavan are Ulster champions. Tyrone took a desperate beating off Kerry. To be fair to Tyrone, they had done reasonably well in the 2 games before that. So, do Tyrone say, right, we played probably the one team in the country that can tear you apart. Let's look at the league in its entirety rather than completely react to this Kerry loss?
You would hope so. I know, I suppose, history would tell you different. They changed the style with Mickey Hard a couple of years ago and took a beating off Donegal and reverted back to tape. But I'd be of the opinion that I think Fergal Logan, Brian Dooher, they see this more as a long-term project. things have happened a bit quicker from them, and there are going to be issues. But I would say that you'll still see a bit more of what their philosophy is in terms of keeping more men ahead of the ball, having more kicking options in the half forward line. It's a good challenge for them in terms of they're coming up against the Ulster champions, and I think if we could, well, I don't know even if we can park Cavan's league form, but Tyrone have to be expecting something similar to what we seen from Cavan last year. Like, I think even as neutrals, every one of us was sitting back, sort of in awe of what they were doing in the Ulster Championship, particularly was the final against Donegal, where they were rank underdogs and they just literally threw themselves at every contest that there was, and were full value for the win. So I'm sure that's what Mickey Graham's going to be trying to get them back. That's the pitch he needs them to be back at. But in terms of this one, I would see it probably being should be a decent game of football. Tyrone, I suppose their kicking game will rely on whether Dara Canavan, instead of playing inside, he's been playing as an outlet in the half forward lane. But looked like he picked up a serious injury against Kerry that time. He was stretched off. So whether he's available or not might sort of tweak their management's thinking, but you'd be very hopeful of having a really good physical contest this weekend.
Peter Canavan's been talking about this, Ger, and he's saying Kerry went to town in our kickouts the last day. Tyrone don't have the luxury of having a big ball winning midfielder like other teams, and we know that's a strength of Cavan's with Gerard McKiernan in midfield and Thomas Galligan in midfield. That's that's probably a strong point of theirs. So Tyrone are going to have to depend on these short kickouts maybe. And we know how risky they are when every team is pushing up. So like I can see Cavan being pretty confident of a desperate record against Tyrone. But this isn't the Tyrone teams that they've desperate records against, if you know what I mean. It's a new team where Cavan can say, here, look, we're well in with a chance here.
No, they'll certainly feel that they're well in with a chance. And again, Mickey Graham will, I suppose, draw on the success of last year and probably try to park that disappointing form from the league. For me, I think that if Cavan play conservatively because of their number of scores that they have been conceding and being relegated, if they drop off, I think it'll play into Tyrone's hands, because I think Tyrone have better footballers overall, and their ability then to move the ball up the field would be superior to Cavan's. But if Mickey Graham is able to take some sort of a calculated risk and push up on the Tyrone kick out like we seen Kerry do in the last league game, I think he will get a bit of reward from it. But I watching a couple of the games the weekend, a lot of teams seem to be just a bit cagey, not overly committing at times. Everyone maybe a bit fearful of conceding scores, that it's knockout football, and I think certainly Tyrone will have to probably maybe adopt that standpoint a bit. And again, obviously the two lads in there, it's their first year, and it is a 3-4 year plan that no doubt that they'll have their eyes on. But at the same time, it is a championship match. You don't want to lose. You do want to progress to the next round. And I can see it a bit of a tactical kind of battle for the first part of the match until both teams maybe settle down, and then see what happens then from there.
If Tyrone don't work the ball up the field quickly, we know Cavan drift back. Cavan like kind of disorganised games, Aaron, where bodies are everywhere and you attack with everyone, defend with everybody. Tyrone will try to play a more of a kicking game, but if you don't have an option from kickouts and you're kicking it short, whether that's under pressure or not under pressure, you're not going to get your kicking game at the other end of the field. It's almost like the game Tyrone want to play. You need to be able to win some sort of kind of ball out around midfield to be able to get that go forward kind of kicking option.
You do, but that is one issue. Like Declan McClure, Brian Kennedy, Richard Donnelly, they've all been tried middle of the field. Frank Burns, Matty Donnelly. It's very unusual for one of your, say, realistically top six teams, not to have one marquee midfielder who's your nailed all certainty, and you maybe have someone, if you're going horses for courses, whether it's another big man or a runner. So it is an area that I think ultimately will hold them back from taking that next step up from being a competitive team to someone who was winning All Irelands like the previously were. But in terms of if they do go short, if they fall into the old habit of going round in circles, waiting for people to come running off the shoulder. It's just going to be the Tyrone of old. You know, if Cavan offered them the opportunity to go short, they still need to have half forwards who are disciplined enough, you know, to hold the lane and make their breaks to the wings, where they're then in a position to receive a kick pass. And at that stage, you know, you might still have taken maybe 4 or 6 Cavan players out. You know, it's freeing up more space in the other end of the field, but they need the men ahead of the ball for that there to happen. Or if it's the case, maybe if they're going to go long, you know, you have to have maybe what the old-fashioned Tyrone was, where you have huge numbers crashing for break ball, and then trying to deliver it inside. But definitely, if they want to evolve, if they want to change, having men ahead of the ball who are, you know, disciplined to hold the lane and capable of then winning the ball, that's massive for them. And it'll be interesting to see what they do. I believe that Logan and Dura know that they need to change, and I do think that they will try and do that this weekend. But I also believe that, I think regardless of where they are in the field, and you say Cavan love unstructured stuff, they love a bit of chaos, and I think as reigning Ulster champions, they have to come out fighting this weekend.
Well, that's the thing, and like they will come out fighting, and kicking games don't really work against the chaos and disorganised game where it's like all 30 players are one end, then they all move down the other end, and then I think Cavan work best in that kind of disorganised, all over the place game. Colin Mcshane looks like he's back now. I read an interview a month ago with Paul Donaghy, and he says he's already back training. So we're looking to have him ready for the championship. Now that throws another kind of string to Tyrone's bow for the maybe a longer ball option, for example, and maybe get a few marks off him. He's outstanding in the air, and you know, like, I mean, if he's in the mix and Mckenna at 11, there's no doubt it strengthens Tyrone, Ger.
No, it does. And to maybe touch on one thing that Aaron said there, that in the unstructured nature that Cavan tried to bring to the game and maybe get opposition to nearly get sucked in and buy into it as well. But where you do get options is when you turn over Cavan in your 21 metre line or half back line. If you have your disciplined forwards, like Aaron mentioned, who are holding the 45.
But Cavan attack with everyone, you see. Cavan mess you up in that kind of way, I think.
Well, that's where you're going to need the management to probably say, listen, we're happy for you just to stay there, and we've enough defenders back there to deal with this. Even if they get a bit of an overlap, we'll just tighten it up. We'll turn them over. And if we even win one of the balls out 2 or out 3 and we get it up to you and we create a goal opportunity, all of a sudden he's going to have to think about going the next time. And that's, again, you do need to keep your forward structure there. On Mcshane, I think he's a super player. Do you start him or do you bring him in? Again, championship football is the intensity level just goes up another notch than league. And the fact that he is only getting back from injury, so maybe he's somebody you bring into the game.
Maybe you're right.
The game has opened up a bit, and Cavan players have fatigued a bit. But it'll be interesting to watch it for the first 15-20 minutes to see how both sides kind of set up and whether there is going to be a bit of a chess match. But if you can turn Cavan over in your defence and have your disciplined outlet player or 1 or 2 guys up in the 45, and all of a sudden, you know, 30-40 metre kick pass up, Cavan guys are defending, running towards their own goal, and a goal opportunity comes, well then they'll have to rethink what they're doing. Yeah,
Killian Clark is made for Mcshane anyways, I suppose, Aaron, if he does, and Faulkner, you'd imagine, will follow Mckenna. Mckenna's been a bit all over the place in the league. He's played a bit in midfield against Kerry, he's centre forward, he's full forward, and he hasn't sprung to life. Like, I mean, his form almost reflects Tyrone's.
Yeah, well, I suppose just if you go back to the Colin Mckenna one, or Colin Mcshane one, sorry, like, he hasn't played a game of football since probably March of last year. Yeah. So like, he's been completely out of football. To throw him in from the start and expect him, like, with the best will in the world and all the rehab you can do and the internal games, to go from playing no football for a year and a half to think you're going to hit the ground running in a championship, it's going to be a huge ask for him. But I don't know, maybe he has been in super condition and they have just been minding him. But my opinion was that maybe the ankle injury turned out to be a lot worse than what it was, or had more complications than they expected, because he really should have been back quicker than this. And then Conor Mckenna, the, I suppose, carefree nature or the zip that he came back with last year has very much been missing out of his game. I was at the Armagh Tyrone game and he just didn't look like the same character. He didn't have the same energy about himself as he did in all his games last year. But it's summer football, it's championship. This is really what he come home for, and I suppose nobody will have been more disappointed in how he was playing than himself. And I think we'll see a much improved version of him. Like he was good in championship last year in the depths of winter. Like I said, bright sunshine, crowds coming back, and coming up against Ulster champions. It should be the sort of game that will get him going.
Yeah, maybe it will. What's your prediction on this one, Ger?
Tyrone for me have too much quality.
Too much quality.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think if Myler might go back and mark Martin Riley, Hampsey on Conor Madden, it's probably hard to see where Cavan will get the scores. Although they have a great spread of scores, that's just the disorganised way they play the game. I think Tyrone will have too much for them as well, Aaron. But I don't see much being in it at the end.
Yeah, well, I would say maybe Hampsey, if Garrod McKernan plays in the half-forward line, you might see him going out there and Ronan McNamee on Madden on the inside line. But Tyrone have a couple of quality defenders that can, like Cavan forward line aren't gonna. They don't have 2 or 3 players that's going to be hitting you for a goal or 3 or 4 points. It's really the collective where they're getting their scores from.
Yeah.
And I would see again Tyrone having enough to get over this one. And set themselves up for a huge clash in an Ulster semi-final.
Exactly. The other big one in Ulster is Derry Donegal. It's in Ballybuffet. This is on Sunday. Like Rory Gallagher obviously knows the Donegal boys really, really well, Ger. From being a man that's involved with a team now, how much of an advantage is that?
It's definitely an advantage.
But the way I look at it, do we all not know the Donegal players? Like, what extras will he know?
Yeah, it's maybe trying to get inside the head of Donegal players in terms of what might irk them and try to put them off and
what they've admitted in a meeting they don't like.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, where a guy might be caught out or feel that he's frail and then try to exploit it. I think this is a very exciting game, just given that Gallagher has been involved as manager and selector up there. Maybe how long was he up there? Maybe
2 or 3 years, around 15, 16 timer.
Yeah, so he definitely knows the lay of the land there particularly well. And I'm mostly interested actually to see how Derry will compete against the Division 1 team, and a Derry team who were fairly well conditioned during the lockdown, more than most teams. And again, fair play to them for being able to
we can't confirm or deny these allegations.
We can't confirm or deny it. Again, I've no issue with it if they do what they have to do to go over the line, but they're just hopping off the ground, and they were so impressive in the Division 3 league final as well. So I'm actually interested, just from nearly even a sports science point of view, to see how the conditioning of a Division 3, very, very solid, impressive Division 3 team will actually be able to last against a well-seasoned, well-oiled, albeit disappointing campaign last year, Donegal, to see how they last over the 70-odd minutes of the game.
But Aaron, are Derry any better than Down, who Donegal dismantled?
For me, they are. Yeah, Down don't have the midfield presence or scoring threat that Derry have. I know Derry have only come up from Division 3, and obviously you're talking about a Down team that was in a division above them and stayed there. They'll be in the same division next year. But for me, I would have to agree where I literally see Derry's conditioning at this stage been up there nearly at Division 1 standard, which, like you both alluded to, is massively impressive. They have serious running pace and power, particularly coming from the back line. And like you said, the options now that they have around the middle of the field, it's huge. Like you'll do well to come across as many midfield pairings that'll be as dynamic and hardworking as Emmett Bradley and Conor Glass. And for me, this is going to be a very, very exciting game. I think like Rory Gallagher, everywhere he goes, he seems to get a great kick off his teams in his first few years, and they're obviously playing with serious belief and energy. And I think the one thing that's been from up north here is all the best footballers in Derry are on the Derry panel this year. From the good young talent that they have coming through between their schools at under 17 and under 19, the top players from your Slot Neils, your Glenn Maharaz, everybody is available to him. And I would have to say it's a long time since I've seen that there in Derry. So it'll be very, very interesting. I know there's a big gap division-wise here, but I think just because of the conditioning and the shape that Derry are in, I think it'll be a bit closer than maybe most people would expect.
And that's something, Wooly, that it's not a point that's related to the players who are going to take to the field for Derry the weekend, but the work that goes on, say, behind the scenes for a management team, and even a county board to try to change the culture, where you've listened to Brodley over the years saying that this club don't get on with that club, and all the infighting that goes on, and they can't get the best fellas on the pitch. But now, obviously, whatever's happened up there and the politics that have taken place and the conversations, and maybe the new guy coming in then who doesn't have any baggage, so to speak, with any of the clubs or delegates, that he's able to get that bounce off the guys, and the guys are buying into it. And it is amazing what you can do. And again, that a lot of those Derry guys as well. Aaron mentioned the strong clubs up there, and having played against Loughneel a couple of times in Ballinderry. The Derry Miners got to a final or semi-final against Kerry a couple of years ago. So these lads are used to big occasions, and they certainly are on the up, and Gallagher's doing a great job with them so far.
Yeah, they definitely are on the up. Another positive, obviously, like you mentioned, Aaron, Emmett Bradley and Conor Glass will be in midfield, and we know McFadden loves to play the Colin Kavanagh role, and he definitely will this weekend because of Shane McGuigan. He'll be dropping back in front of him, so one of them is going to have to understand that you're going to be free at some point until the changeover happens and somebody starts marking you. Make a nuisance of yourself, especially Bradley. I wouldn't see McFadden dropping off Bradley. I'd say he'll probably mark Glass. Even if it's Glass, then they'll have a good physical battle, but Glass needs to understand McFadden is going to run away from me a lot of the time to run in and cover McGuigan.
Or Rory Gallagher, being as smart as he is, and having seen the damage that Garrett McKinless has been doing driving forward from centre half back, it could be a case of where as soon as he takes off and he goes, Conor Glass can sit back, cover for him, and he knows he's going at Hugh McFadden, who realistically you're sort of a sitting duck. I know you might be able to come and try and meet it, but I have to say, like, I know Garrett McKinless from obviously playing club football against Ballinderry, and he's someone who I was always very impressed with, but he probably just never really committed. He was back and forward to America every summer, but it's obvious, his talent is there, but he's bought into the whole county ethos, and you can see from his performances that he's right at home at this level, and he's somebody, like, he loves the physicality, he loves a bit of confrontation, and he's not going to shy away from any challenge or trying to take on anyone as he's breaking up the field. So you can be fairly sure as he goes forward, they're not going to leave themselves open at the back, and if it is Hugh McFadden that's dropping off, I think that a tweak like that there is something where I think you'll see Rory Gallagher's knowledge really coming to the fore, and how to exploit maybe certain players in certain situations.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. McKinless is an unbelievable weapon, and if Glass drops back to centre half back, it just gives him literally no defensive responsibilities at all, just to bump forward. Another positive for Derry is Chrissy McCaig will take up McBrearty. Very rare you see Chrissy McCaig get anyone getting the better of him. He's just a sticky, excellent player who you can depend on, and they'll have Brendan Rodgers marking Michael Murphy, and Michael Murphy's coming back off a hamstring injury. Declan Bonner says he's all right. What's the message to Brendan Rodgers? Get up that field, off you go every single time. And it's not like Brendan Rodgers won't accept this invitation.
No, he'll try to take on a few fellas as well going out the field, but both McCaig and Brendan Rodgers, and Rodgers obviously in particular, are so strong at driving up the field. And if you have that defensive structure or understanding there with your midfielders, and Aaron mentioned Conor Glass, if you see your half back or the likes of McCaig or Rodgers breaking through the line to try to create the overlap, working the ball through the hands, you can go in comfort as a defender, knowing that someone's going to pick up my man, and I don't need to be kind of half going, which is what a lot of defenders are going to do. But if you're going, just really go for it and see what happens, knowing that if you are turned over, we still have a few bodies back there. But it's the biggest question I would have of Derry is will they be able to maintain it? I think they're going to get a huge performance from themselves. I don't think they're going to fall off. They're not going to be overly nervous, whereby their performance will be impacted negatively upon. It's just if they can actually just sustain that required effort for the 70-80 minutes to be able to stick with Donegal,
Yeah, Aaron, can you see Donegal overthinking this and playing Mogan at centre half forward to watch the threat of McKinless, or it's hard to know where Mogan plays a lot of the time because it's all mashed in around. He's picked in the forwards but often plays wing back. You could play Bon Gallagher and Ryan McHugh as the two wing backs, Brennan as centre back and Mogan at centre forward, where he wouldn't be totally out of place, but I want you goal side of McKinless every time we don't have the ball, waiting for that burst onto it.
Yeah, it's an area that Donegal are going to have to be very aware of, because in general, I suppose their older teams, there was a lot of people dropping back, but that team, they tend to go with forwards. They don't tend to go. I know, like I said, Mogan's always named, but he literally always plays wing half forward or wing half back. He might have a forward number on him, but he'll come back to wing half back. None of their half forwards really like to be chasing and going the opposite way. Thompson, Langan, these boys, they love getting on the ball, they love creating things, they love coming on the loop and getting shots off. I don't think there's too many centre half forwards like spending the day chasing their own man. So it is definitely something that by all means they're going to be very much aware of and will have a plan for. But whether they'll do away with maybe one of their forwards in order to have Mogan chasing him, I'm not so sure. Maybe a Division 1 team, a team of the calibre of Donegal, someone as smart as the likes of Stephen Rochford, who in terms of what he did with Mayo or with Carfin, in terms of having outlets in the half forward lane where balls played through, that you occupy a defender instead of chasing a defender. Maybe that's the angle that they will look at to see, can they exploit him in terms of defensively instead of him dictating the whole state of play. And the only other one that we just sort of passed over was, and I'm assuming he is back fit, but Brendan Rodgers in the Cavan game looked like he gave his hamstring a right tear. So that's why he had missed the league final over awfully. So I suppose similarly, like Michael Murphy in that Monaghan game, looked like he tweaked the hamstring. Rodgers pulled up really sharply in the Cavan game as he was breaking out one time. So he'll not have had much football under his belt, and he might be probably just borderline as well. So the two of them could probably bluff against each other and see how to get on.
Yeah. Maybe they'll just mark each other.
Yeah.
I know, but on the negatives for Derry, in a big question mark I have over them is if Shane McGuigan is marked, and McManaman will mark him. He's Donegal's go-to man marker, and you'll have McFadden sitting in front of him. Where do Derry's scores come from? Because I don't see enough danger in the Derry team to go along with McGuigan, not in the full forward line anyways.
It'll probably have to come from the overlap and the ball being worked through the hands, probably attacking via the wing. So if Shane McGuigan, again, from a coaching point of view, and again, would have played in Donegal, Boston with Steve McManaman, so a lovely guy, a very tough, narky defender, very sticky, prone to the odd yellow or the odd black. If he is overzealous, McManaman in his marking of Shane McGuigan, will then, that will obviously put Donegal under pressure. But McGuigan will probably have to step up to the sweeper, again try to occupy him, and then he'd just have two guys marking him close by, which then will create pockets of space behind. But when the sweeper is there, no point in kicking it in unless it's a very, very deep crossfield ball like the lads used to put into Ronan Clark or Armagh, that it's nearly right up on the end line and he's catching marks, which he'd be well able to do as well. But generally speaking, when you're faced with that type of defence, I think running through the hands and drawing out the defenders is something you'll have to do. If you do get a bit of a lead then, and Donegal need to push up and they're chasing the game a bit, well then you have to evolve in the field, and then you got to see the opportunities in the space then to kick it in, because Donegal can't afford to leave a sweeper there because they're under pressure.
Yeah, they have to push out on them. Maybe that's the thing. Like, I mean, from Derry going forward, just to finish up on this game, Aaron, like you see this young Higgins lad that plays with the minors. He's a beast of a man altogether. Him and Conor Glass. Then you put Emmett Bradley in the forwards. And now you're beefing up that forwards. I don't see enough danger in their forward line to take the next step. Rory Gallagher thinks that they're well capable of challenging the very, very top teams. I'm not so sure they're there. I think a realistic aim for them at the moment is to get to a level of a Galway, maybe.
I would see them probably been a wee bit like Armagh 2 or 3 years ago, where the potential is there, the rawness is there with them. I think from 1 to about 12, they're very competitive. They're, in my eyes, a good Division 2 team at this stage, and I see them staying in it next year. But to get to this next level that Rory Gallagher's talking about, that's getting to Division 1, that's staying in Division 1, and that's beating the big teams. And for me, they're just a couple of years off, but they're definitely heading in the right direction. I think to make that next step, you need maybe one, possibly two more players of the level of Shane McGuigan, who's capable of taking the burden off him and still being able to rack up big scores. But they've just won the under-17s last week, which was obviously last year's competition. A lot of those boys are under 18. They have a very good under 20 team. So there definitely is. There's a lot of talent coming through. There's a lot of the old traditional names starting to come through. Your Downies, your McGurks, these type names, obviously coming from the great Derry team in the early 90s. So they're very much a county that have got their house in order and are starting to build again.
Great to see it, isn't it? Do any of the 95 All-Ireland winners?
Good question.
I don't think any.
No, I think you have to go back to the 83.
Yeah, we lived the Brogans, that kind of, and Barney Rock and stuff like that. It's probably it's been too recent. Should it only be 50? I'm talking nonsense here. Tipperary, Kerry, lads. We'll all go Donegal there, lads.
Yeah, for me.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, we'll all go Donegal. Tipperary, Kerry, lads, we won't spend too much time on this. This is going to be a one-sided game as far as I can see. Like, it's very obvious what Tipperary are going to do. They'll do the same as they did against Cork. I think Aaron in last year's final, Quinlivan, Sweeney inside, drop bodies back, try and hit them on the counter-attack. The problem is Kerry aren't as tactically naive as Cork were in the Munster final. So, that's pretty much their only hope. But whether that will work or not is the question.
Yeah, and I think again, Kerry obviously had a good comprehensive win against Clare last day out, but Kerry being Kerry, they'll just want to lay out a marker and just let Tipperary know that was the final, or Munster final they won last year. It wasn't against the Kerry team. They mean business. This is just another step in the road for them. And I would say it's been a very difficult day at the office for Tipperary. They seem like they've lost the sort of the zest and buzz that they had within their group last year. And like I said, just a few injuries, lots of appetite in that there. There's, for me, there'll only be one winner. What I'm probably more interested to see is there any, what's the tweaks in the Kerry team? What changes have they made? What have they learned from the last day? I know as comfortable as the one, for me personally, I still think that there's areas that they need to improve on, and as a neutral looking in, that's what I'll be looking to see. Because we're all hoping for a bigger picture and a bigger game down the lane that they might be involved in.
Yeah, no, we definitely are. One thing that Tipperary will mess up if they use that counter-attack game, and now it's not an ugly counter-attack game, they'll turn it over and they'll look to kick into the two lads, but at the same time, Kerry's game is a kicking game, and Kerry don't like playing against this because they have to play that kind of stalemate game on the outside of a screen. Kerry don't like that. They hate it, in fact. So, it is in Tipperary's interest to cut out those kick passes and take Kerry out of a game that they want.
But at the same time, I think Kerry forwards this year, any Kerry forward getting the ball inside the 45, the opposition 45, they're having a cut and they're asking questions of their marker, and even the sweeper, a couple of sweepers that are there. And with the off-the-shoulder running, the kind of diagonal runs or banana runs off the shoulder, the way Kerry are moving at the moment, for me, you could have 20 Tipperary footballers back there, and it's still only going to be one winner. So again, something Aaron mentioned there, and he talked about Conor Mckenna with Tyrone, that bit of energy and spark that was there when he came back last year. He needs to get back to that level, but in the same way, Tipperary as a whole, I've seen a good bit of them this year, and he's definitely lost that bit of energy and that bit of spark. You still have quality players there, but they're kind of playing within themselves, and I just can't see them turning around and Kerry are in the humour. Where's the match on? Is it?
It is on in Thurles.
It's on Thurles. Okay, I was going to say, if it was on Fitzgerald Stadium, I think Kerry could really wipe the floor with them.
Yeah, but Thurles is a big footballing pitch. It's a hurling pitch, but it's a massive pitch. I think this is one of the pilots, so there's 3,500 there. So there'll be 100 Tipperary fans and 3,400 Kerry fans. By the way, Tipperary don't get support. The home advantage isn't great for Tip because they're not well supported, and they don't have an exceptional record at home anyway. So, I would see that pitch almost suiting Kerry more than Tipperary. Are we all going for Kerry here?
Going for Kerry, yeah.
Aaron?
I am indeed, Kerry as well also.
I don't know why I threw that over there. It will be interesting to see where Sean O'Shea plays as well. It's another kind of talking point. Cork Limerick is the other one. This is in the Gaelic grounds, a home game from Limerick. This was a weird one because 2019 they played each other in the championship, and I was talking Limerick up a little bit, and I was thinking maybe, I think they were coming off a win before that game, and they ended up getting beaten 3-18 to 6 points. Obviously Limerick have improved a lot since then. They should have beaten Tip last year, and they were very impressive in the league this year. They won 2 of the 3 games. They got into semi-final. Derry beat them 18-14, something like that. So and then they followed that up by hammering Waterford. So they seem to like they're a different prospect now, Jared, than they were 2 years ago. You still have to fancy Cork strongly, but I don't know. I'm trying to make a case for this not being a very one-sided game.
I'm going to go with Limerick on this occasion, and I can't think of the manager's name. Billy Lee, but listen to him speak after the Waterford game. He was talking about this team. We just want to get the best out of ourselves. We want to get better week to week, and that's what we're all about. And that disappointment of losing against Tip last year, with obviously a wonderful equalising point from Quinlivan in normal time on the outside of the left, I think. They were so disappointed. Conor Sweeney, they would have been so disappointed and deflated by that. And you can see it in their performance this year, and they pushed Derry probably the closest of all the league games that they actually had, keeping within 4 points. So I'm going to go with Limerick on this occasion. I haven't been overly impressed with Cork. I don't know if they've come on any further.
It doesn't from the league. You see, it's very hard to read league form, but it doesn't look like they've come on. It looks like they have gone backwards. Conceded 25 points to Westmeath. In their relegation match.
And even then to be relegated as well.
But no, they weren't relegated. They just weren't promoted. They beat Westmeath in that.
Okay, sorry. Okay, it's. They've only been all right, and they've only been all right for the last number of years for me. And they just caught Kerry on the hop last year in the Munster final. Kerry took their eye off the ball, but I'm gonna go with Limerick now, I think, for this one.
Yeah, well, I'm going for Cork. I do think that, they probably will have too much for them with Hurley and Collins back, and they have a better forward line probably to get those scores.
We put a tenner on it.
Oh, we can if you want, yeah. Well, you're going to be even money.
Yeah,
even money tenner. That's
okay.
Geez, that's a great offer.
Yeah.
How do you see this going?
I'll jump in. I'll go with Cork. I can see exactly where Jared's coming from. I think a lot of the time you end up just getting frustrated with Cork because there's a lot of teams you know what they're doing. You can see a pattern to them, and for me, I never really see much of a pattern with them. I don't really know what their style of play is. They just seem to have raw talent, good athletes. I suppose from last year, obviously Kieran Sheehan has retired, even though obviously he didn't play against Kerry. But Killian O'Hanlon, I think he'd done the cruciate early in the year. He's out.
He's a big
Cathal O'Mahony was a very good forward. I was very impressed with him at an under-20s last year, and obviously he's out now for the remainder of the season. But still, with Luke Conley, Mark Collins, Brian Hurley, Rory Dean, those boys, I still see them having enough up front to get to scoring's not really an issue for them in games like that, whether it's against Westmeath or your Limericks, but it's taking that next step from being a Division 2 team to being a consistent top Division 1 team is where they seem to be at a stalemate at the moment. So again, I do see it being competitive, much more competitive than what it was in 18, but for me, I'll go with Cork in this one.
Yeah, I'll go with Cork. I'll go Cork as well, and we'll be a tenner each.
I'm a betting the Suey as well.
I'll
take Sterling by winning, Aaron, right?
All right,
I'll jump out of this one.
Last one then is Leitrim Mayo, lads. There's not too much to say here. This is going to be a complete mismatch. Leitrim got relegated from Division 3. And they didn't win a game in Division 4, which was surprising. Although they were very competitive against good teams, Antrim and Louth. It was a tough division that they were in, Leitrim. But at the same time, they just don't have a chance here against Mayo.
They don't have a chance, and to all due respect to Leitrim, it's just hard to see anyway that they're going to ask too many questions of Mayo. And if I'm going to jump forward to the Connacht final, I think Mayo playing against Sligo, playing in Division 2, albeit they've done really well in Division 2, Mayo, hammering Sligo, probably something similar against Leitrim, to go in and play against Galway, who have had more challenging games, albeit intermittent results, but obviously coming off the back of a a hard-fought, kind of sloppy, rainy day against Roscommon. I think that's going to stand more to Galway going into the game in the Connacht final, but I don't want to be jumping ahead.
Yeah, because we're nearly out of time now. Let's not preview the Connacht
Let's
final
not preview it, but it's Mayo all day.
Yeah, Mayo all day, Aaron.
It is. I again get what Jared's saying there, but I think what James Horan has done this past few years, he's built a seriously competitive panel. We could have 2 or 3 changes in any one day, and everyone fits into the system. Even minus Killian O'Connor, still see them comfortably getting over this one.
Yeah, and it's in McHale Park. Like, the reality is, the way Mayo approach these games is this game could be over after 15 minutes, a bit like the Sligo one. They'll just go all for it. Heavy metal football, blow a Leitrim won't know whether they're coming or going, because Mayo are so powerful and such a good footballing team that it'll probably be over. No disrespect to Leitrim or anything like that. Right, listen, we've gone way over time. We'll be back on Monday. Hopefully the Ulster Championship sparks this championship into life, and we'll have 2 good games up there. The rest of them probably be a little bit one-sided, except for Limerick Cork, where me and Aaron will have a tenner off Ger on Monday. Right, we'll leave it there. We'll be back on Monday. We'll talk to you all then. Good luck.